Thank you very much, and say what a pleasure it is to be here. NBR has really a terrific reputation, bringing together scholars, policymakers, members of the Japanese press. So it's really a great opportunity to discuss some of the. Really, what I'd like to do is talk more generally about Asia, maybe focusing six-party issues. But as I often like to remind people, there's more going on in Asia than just North Korea. Duly perspective. We have, you look at the really going on in the East Asia Bureau right now at the State Department, you'll see a lot of people working on the issue of Burma, the humanitarian operations, and I'm very pleased that what is happening is you have really a very cohesive team. You have our embassies in places like Bangkok, very, very engaged. We have a new ambassador to ASEAN, Scott Marcial, very, very much working this problem day and night. We have a mission in an embassy really in Rangoon under Sherry Villarosa, who really, I don't know when they get to sleep because they work all day and take our telephone calls all night. And yet they have, I think, done a magnificent job of really showing the Burmese people, indeed, I think showing all the people in Asia, the essential humanitarian quality of the American people. I thought it was so important in, as the dimensions of this cyclone became clear. We were in very close communication with Tim Keating, Admiral Blair's successor by two iterations, yeah. And Admiral Keating sent a letter to the Burmese authorities to make clear what assets the Pacific Command could bring to bear on the issue. He was able to get in there with the first C-130. He went back to he listened to what people said there, what they needed, went back, worked with our people, with State Department, embassy people as well. Next thing you know, he brought in more C-130s with plastic for people, with so many homes destroyed. He was able to bring in plastic sheathing, bottled water. I know there's a lot of concerns about diversion, and yet we were pretty sure that things like bottled water and plastic sheathing were not subjects of any major diversion. So he had 2, 3, 4 additional flights, and then by about the 5th or 6th flight, we were able to marry up directly the C-130s with NGOs operating on the scene, and now we've had something like 45 C-130s coming in. Other countries are also beginning to get in, and the United Nations hoping to begin helicopter operations very shortly. This represents, I think, a real diplomatic engagement between the U.S. and its other partners, allies in the region, including and especially the ASEAN countries. I wish, and I think my wish is shared by many, many people, that the Burmese authorities would respond more quickly and with more compassion to the plight of their people in this situation. We'll try to do more to make sure that access is provided to all the NGOs. We had problems getting teams in who could do assessments because the Burmese authorities felt if you weren't bringing something with you, what purpose was it that you were coming? And yet you need to assess what the situation is before you bring in materials. So we had assessment teams waiting, but I'm pleased to say that those assessment teams have also been able to get in. In the meantime, ASEAN particularly has put together trying to work with the Burmese authorities and putting together some kind of donor conference. The UN has stepped up as I speak today. Secretary General Ban Ki-moon is in. And so out of this terrible tragedy in Burma, in which so many thousands of people have lost their lives, I think we can see that it has kind of brought us more closely together in terms of how the U.S. can work with countries in the region, the way the State Department, U.S. Agency for International Development can work with the Pacific Command, because if you think back to the tsunami, really the team that got there furthest with the mostest was in fact the Pacific Command, and so I think it really shows what we can do when we work together on this. And I think really, as difficult as the problem of Burma has been, and as difficult as the authorities in Burma have been, in a funny way, they've helped bring together the other countries in the region, and help to make for even greater engagement on our part. So we look to do a lot more with ASEAN. As I mentioned, we now have an ambassador to ASEAN, Scott Marcel. He was recently represented us at a senior officials meeting at the ASEAN Regional Forum. Secretary Rice is very much looking forward to her visit to the ASEAN Regional Forum in July. And we'll look to see other things we can do. And clearly Burma is a major issue that needs to be resolved. But it's, Burma doesn't live in a vacuum. It is now it is a member of ASEAN, so obviously ASEAN has some responsibilities for dealing with it. But it's also got neighbors such as India and China who need to be engaged. And I think we have options for dealing with Burma, but we don't have the option of walking away from the problem. We've got to really stay engaged and see if that country that had so much progress, so much promise in the 1950s could realize some of that promise. So I think the whole issue of how U.S. deals in Southeast Asia is really kind of a symptom of how we're trying to deal with the rest of Asia. That is, work with allies, work with partners, and really show the countries that we are very much engaged and we very much care about their future. I know there's a lot of discussion, especially in Southeast Asia, whether there can be room for both the U.S. and China. China, in fact, has been very active in Southeast Asia, and I don't think it's anything that anyone should be concerned about. I think, for decades we looked for a second engine of development in the world. There was the U.S. economy, and there wasn't much beyond that. And now, in the past couple of decades, we can see that the Chinese economy has played a real role in bringing the growth rates of some of these other countries up. If you look at what has happened in the Philippines in terms of gaining growth rates of 5-6%, you can trace a lot of this directly to the development of the Chinese economy. Similarly, if you look at in Southeast Asia, if you look at countries like Vietnam, who've had growth rates that are now in this sort of 8-9%, a lot of that's also traceable to China. This is not to say that we don't have issues with China's engagement in Southeast Asia. There are certainly a lot of environmental problems that I think we have to be very much on top of. But I think we should look at China as a partner in this region and understand that more of China doesn't mean less of the U.S. And we found that in our diplomatic engagement with these countries, these countries understand that more of China doesn't mean that the U.S. is somehow staging any kind of strategic withdrawal. On the contrary, we're very much interested in developing our relationships with this association of Southeast Asian countries, numbering some 500 million people. So I think things are, from the U.S. diplomatic point of view, we are very much engaged throughout the region. Our relationships with Indonesia, troubled so often in the past, are really on a very strong footing today. I think any time you can claim a good diplomatic relationship, in fact, a good overall relationship with a country that has some 230 million people, I think that's an accomplishment that we can all feel very, very positive about. Our president has visited Indonesia, and it's a country that I think is clearly in the right direction, and its success, I think, will really very much be a harbinger of further success in the overall region. And really what we're seeing in the development of ASEAN, development of relationships among these states, is a desire for, I think, a greater sense of community in Asia. And so as we look at this desire for community in Asia, we need to sort of assess where we will stand in this. I mean, does the U.S. want to be, looking at it from the other side of the Pacific Ocean, or do we want to be part of the sort of founding of the foundation of these communities? My own view is we need to be very much engaged, not only with the countries individually, and certainly our bilateral relationships are extremely important there, but we need to be engaged with these countries as they move together to form multilateral associations. Moving over to Northeast Asia, we've seen a region really that has had precious little multilateral organization. And so we found that not unlike the situation in Burma, we had a situation in North Korea where this country was, I think it's fair to say, rather out of step with its neighbors. That is, while its neighbors were developing their economies, this country has not been developing their economies. They've been developing nuclear weapons. And I think we made a very important decision a few years ago, which was to say that we're not going to be able to solve the North Korean nuclear issue on our own. We need to engage the countries in the region. They have a direct stake in this. And if the U.S. can work together with China, work together with South Korea, with Japan, and with Russia, maybe all of these countries, which together amount to quite a large percentage of the world's GDP, maybe all of these countries can bring to bear what is necessary to get North Korea off of this nuclear track. And so, indeed, we began this six-party process. It's had its fits and starts, to be sure. It's had its good moments and certainly had its bad moments, but we have been able, I think, to pull together a mechanism which together, and as we work together on next steps, I think we are pulling it together in a way that is moving North Korea in the right direction. And as we did this, we found that it was working with in the immediate objective of getting North Korea first to shut off its reactor. And, when we did that, a lot of people scoffed at the idea, well, they're just shutting off the reactor. That's been done before. But let me tell you, you cannot get, you would not be able to disable that reactor without first shutting it off. I mean, if you've ever tried to fix your toaster, probably the first thing you should do is unplug the thing. And so, indeed, that's what we did last summer with the Yongbyon reactor. We unplugged it, but then later in the fall months and right up till today, we've had American technicians on the spot there at the behest of the six parties, taking disabling steps such that we believe that as these steps continue and as this process continues, we will not have a problem of additional plutonium production in North Korea. So we continued to work on this immediate and urgent issue, but we found that as we worked on it, we found that something else was happening, and not unlike some sort of production facility where you're trying to produce a main product and then you have a byproduct and you find that, geez, maybe that byproduct ought to be bottled and sold as well. We found that the byproduct of this six-party process is also something very valuable, which is better relations among the countries involved in the six parties. So quite apart from the North Korean issue, we found that Japan was able to talk to China. Even through some difficult periods, Japan and China were able to talk to each other effectively through the six parties. We found that South Korea and Japan were able to work together in the six parties, and it was very interesting to see South Korea and China develop a relationship. I mean, South Korea and China have been neighbors for thousands of years, and yet, in many respects, the relationship is very new, and we found that they were able to work together as a result of the six-party process. So, as we've continued to work on the main event, that is getting North Korea to do away with its nuclear ambitions, we found that this overall mechanism that we had set up was one that we might want to think about for the future, quite apart from the North Korean nuclear issue. And so, with that in mind, we have been looking at the possibility, at the idea of making this a permanent mechanism on the Northeast Asian landscape. That is, a Northeast Asian peace and security mechanism, which, albeit at the beginning, I think we need to be modest about what it can accomplish. It'll be a sort of forum at the beginning, but we would hope that at some point it could be a kind of a security mechanism that could deal with some of the tougher questions in the region. But with the understanding that sometimes a multilateral mechanism can deal with those tough questions better than just going to a bilateral process. So we have some hopes for this, and the hopes are based on the fact that we've been able to work together on a very tough issue, but it's based on the fact that some relationships have been born as a result of this six-party process. So we have some hopes that we can create this Northeast Asia peace and security mechanism and go forward with that. Now, a number of people point out, well, surely you don't want to take this Northeast Asia peace and security mechanism and replace replace bilateral relationships. Well, that is pretty obvious. We do not want to replace our bilateral relationships. Our bilateral relationships are extremely important. Our security relationship with Japan, in particular, extremely important to us. Our security relationship with South Korea is also very important, and obviously the U.S. has a very vital bilateral relationship with China that we want to carry on and strengthen for a lot of reasons that I think are very much important to China, but also to us. So in no way is this going to replace bilateral relationships, but I think that it is something that can complement those relationships, allow countries to get to know each other better, maybe cooperate in some key areas such as energy, for example, try to sign on to some basic principles. Not so easy because these countries are rather heterogeneous, to be sure, with different histories and different approaches to their own diplomacy, and yet if we can get them to sign on to certain principles of how they will behave to each other, I think that will be a major step forward. But I think most importantly, from the U.S. perspective, we want to be there, we want to be on the ground, and we don't want a situation where people feel that we are somehow decoupled from the aspirations of people in Asia to develop a greater sense of community. So I think that's precisely what we are dealing with here. We are very much a catalyst in this creation of this Northeast Asia peace and security mechanism. Russia has a very important role to play in this because Russia, first of all, is running our working group on trying to develop some of the concepts and some of the principles of this Northeast Asia peace and security mechanism, which has the unfortunate acronym of NIEPSM, which I can't even pronounce. So I think we will have a contest at some point and come up with a better name for it. But it's something where Russia has a lot of experience with this sort of stuff in the European area, and things like CSCE and later became OSCE. So we think we can work together with Russia on this. Indeed, when you look at the overall six parties and how different countries have different contributions to make, I think we do very much have a process that will go forward. One other comment on the main event, which is to deal with the North Korea nuclear aspirations. We have engaged with North Korea through the six-party mechanism in trilateral meetings. We've engaged with them quadrilaterally. We engage with them bilaterally, but it's all on the same six-party platform. It's a very broad platform. It's a very sturdy platform, and on that platform, I think you can do a lot of different things. So the fact that we deal with North Korea bilaterally at times doesn't mean we're somehow pushing aside the six parties. On the contrary, we're dealing with them on the basis of the six-party platform. We have done so. I think it is one of the most important things about diplomacy is to make sure the other guy knows precisely what you think. And that's why sometimes it's very useful to sit down face-to-face and explain precisely what your thinking is so that there will be no misunderstandings. I think we have made it very clear to the North Koreans that whatever their future is, and whatever their aspirations for some kind of U.S. relationship are, they need to understand we cannot have a relationship with a nuclear North Korea. North Korea is going to have to do away with these nuclear weapons if it values a good relationship with the U.S. And we are prepared to establish a good relationship with North Korea with the understanding, of course, that as with many relationships that we will have continuing disagreements. But we are prepared to have a normal relationship with a non-nuclear North Korea. North Korean diplomats often tell me that they need nuclear weapons for their security. On the contrary, nuclear weapons are not something that is going to ensure security